The terrace held the day's last heat. Daenerys stood barefoot on pale tiles that had soaked the sun like bread soaks broth, warmth rising through the bones of her feet long after the light had fled. Below, Qarth spilled toward the harbor in layers of ivory and lacquer. Loggias with painted ceilings, garden courts filigreed by shade, the distant green-black sheet of water under night. If she leaned over the parapet, she could hear the harbor bells, the soft clatter of rigging, the slick slap of waves on hull, and the voices of men who belonged to ships. The city was full of such voices, half in song and half in bargaining. Spices braided the air, pepper and cinnamon, crushed mint and the camphor of some resin she did not know. And under those bright smells lay the fainter odors of fish and oil and the almond tannin of old wood baking to fatigue. Drogon lay a warm coil along her shoulders, his neck looped round her collarbone, his head tucked beneath her jaw so that every breath brushed her skin. Regal had slithered across the balustrade and was draped like a dangling scarf over the carved leaves and grapes, tail twitching as if chasing a dream. Viserion curled around the brass lantern on the nearest table and flared his wings to catch the last stray warmth from its spent flame. Their skins were changing daily. When she pinched the edge of a wing, she could feel the war inside it. New scales pushing up under old, the long, slow forging of their bodies, heat waking in them like a coal tapped from a larger fire. When they slept, they whistled through their nostrils and sometimes clacked their teeth as if crunching phantom bones. They smelled of char and iron and that sweetish, slightly sour scent of a stable kept very clean. "You spoil them," Jiki had told her earlier, with the dry affront that meant laughter soon. "You spoil them and they will shame you, Khaleesi, like boys who grow too proud." She had smiled and did not argue. Since the red waist, she had found herself greedy with touch. Her hand on a child's hair, her cheek against a dragon's neck, fingers pressed into the grain of a door as she passed, feeling the striations as one feels the ribs of a familiar beast. It was as if the desert had tanned her from the heart outward, tight as a drumhead, and now, somewhere it was loosening, remembering rain. The first day in Qarth, she had sobbed by accident at the sight of a fountain, though she tried to hide it and told herself it was only the music of water striking marble that had shaken something loose. She could pick out parts of the city by their sounds. The long sigh of silk unrolled in a courtyard, hammering in a bronzesmith's lane, small and fast like heartbeats. The sudden thin wail of a child in a mother's patience hush, the clatter of a dice box on a wine-stained board, flute music sliding along the wind like a snake. From the street beyond their gate rose the sing-song cry of a man selling pomegranates. Pomegranates the color of garnets, as if the fruit had stolen the harbor's bell and burned it into seeds. And somewhere a pair of jackals barked at the edge of the gardens, where grafted trees drooped heavy with lanterns and fruits tied like gifts. She made herself breathe deep and slow until the sea came into her lungs, cool, salted, a promise. When she turned her head to look back into the room, the lanterns threw little watery rings of light on the walls. Eerie had put rose oil in the floor wash, and now the place breathed a faint, clean sweetness. On the table lay a plate on which 1 lemon and 3 figs remained. Yora had eaten 2 and she had eaten 1. He had not wanted the lemon. He said it made him dream of the sour hills in summer where even the grass tasted of citrus and the sheep had yellow fat. "Khaleesi!" Jiki appeared in the doorway, her braid heavy with silver beads that clicked when she moved. "There is a woman below." She did not have to say which woman. Daenerys touched Drogon's neck, her hand just above that soft place where scale rounded to softer skin, and he shifted and opened one ruby eye, slit narrow, then closed it again, uninterested. "Send her up." Jiki lowered her gaze. "She is already on the stair." The masked shadow slid into the lantern's penumbra, as if she had been standing within it all along. Daenerys found herself shivering as she always did when Qarth came, though the night's heat had not changed. The woman smelled faintly of something round and dry, ground star anise perhaps, and of salt. The lacquered mask covered her from forehead to chin. In the lamplight, it took the sheen of fish scales, mother of pearl. "Child of storm," said Qarth, her voice passing through the lacquer as if through silk. "Why do you stand here when the city turns like a wheel above a hill and your spokes are loosening?" "I do not understand," Daenerys said politely. Drogon shifted and broke a soft bud sound in his throat. "Will you drink? We have watered wine with mint." Qarth lifted one hand, gloved in some thin, shimmering weave. When she moved, she made a small chime with no visible bells. "You are offered ships whose timbers are promises and whose nails are lies. You are offered a husband whose heart has 33 locks and a vault with 33 keys that do not turn. You are offered a friend with a pale tongue who will tell you you are the only true light. You are offered death under the wings of a moth." Daenerys felt the words settle like dust on water. Jorah came from the inner room then, his hair damp at the temples, his linen shirt unlaced and clinging. He had the look he wore when he did not know he was watched. Alert, hungry, protective, his mouth almost a line. He took in Qarth with a hard glance and did not bow. "You remember my old friend," Daenerys said, with a cordiality she chose carefully, like a shawl selected for a particular door. "He served my brother. He serves me now." Qarth made that faint chiming sound again, either a shift of wrist or a trick of the mask. "Every man serves now and then. Sometimes it is someone unseen. Sometimes it is a word he told himself long ago that he mistook for his own voice." "I ask you to be plain," Jorah said, perhaps harsher than was wise. He had rubbed his beard with his knuckles. She could tell by the way the hair lay, roughened against itself. "The plainest thing is the hardest to see," said Qarth gently. "A fish cannot learn the shape of water by swimming. He must leap." "Khaleesi," Jorah said low. "We can't feed on riddles and perfume." Daenerys stepped forward so that the mask was very near. She saw tiny imperfections in the lacquer, hairline scratches. Under the mask, Qarth's eyes were not visible. Where they should have been, the lacquer caught the lantern and showed her own small face twice, stretched and curved. In each, Drogon's eye burned like a coal. "You have come to say something that matters," Daenerys said. "Say it. There is a thing here that belonged to neither the 13 nor the pureborn nor the warlocks," Qarth said. "It belonged to the sea before it belonged to any hand. It remembers what it was before it slept. It is hungry." Drogon lifted his head fully this time. Regal twitched on the balustrade and hissed, lids lifting from eyes the color of old copper. Viserion spiked the air with his tongue and rattled his scales lightly, a sound like someone sifting grain. "Another egg," Jorah said quickly, an eagerness there she rarely saw in him. He tamped it at once into caution, but it had flared. "Khaleesi, if such a thing were true, it would not be simple. Every merchant prince in this city would sell the gates to his mother's house to own it. And the warlocks. The warlocks would drink its shadow and spit out husks," Qarth said. "They have grown thin on the memory of a fruit. Now they wait by your empty plate, hoping for a seed." She tilted her head. "They would sooner unmake it than see you feed it." "Where is it?" Daenerys asked. Her voice did not tremble, though something new had entered the room with the possibility. Something that shifted the weight of the air, something that made the lantern's flame stretch longer and thinner. "In a garden," Qarth said, "on a plinth of green stone that sweats at night. Watchers keep watch, as is their name. Doors have mouths. Keys bite and leave no wound that shows." Jorah made a small sound in his throat. "She speaks of that, of the place Xaro keeps his trophies," he said to Daenerys. "The Garden of 1,000, they call it. Every rare thing stolen from shadow and summer and men's vanity put there to be walked past after wine." "I have walked there," Daenerys said. She had liked it because it felt like a story without words. Things arranged by a mind for the delight of minds. There is a skull of some giant beast with teeth like tents. There is a table carved from a single block of jade green as a drowned man's dream. There is a tree in a silver tub whose leaves are silk sewn with gold thread and horned birds that sing with hidden bellies. She set her hand on Drogon's head, felt the skull under skin and scale, the living heat. "What you speak of I did not see. You did not know which thing was alive," Qarth replied, as if that answered everything. "When you look again, do not go alone. Do not go in the day. Do not tell the mouth of the door your name. Offer it something that has tasted you before." "What does that mean?" Jorah demanded. Qarth's head turned slightly toward him. There is a red road and a blue road. Choose neither. You are a man who chose once and spends the rest of his years choosing it again." She turned then as if to go. Daenerys reached out, but the motion brought her knuckles against the mask and she barely touched it. It was cool as river stone. For a moment, she felt the old panic that had lived in her ribs when she was still a girl with her brother. When doors opened to rooms where she had to swallow a smile and sit very still while men spoke of her as if she were a game piece carved from salt. Panic she had sworn she would never obey again. Past. "Why help me?" she asked, softly enough that only someone very near could hear. Qarth's voice was softer still. "There are people who set fires and there are people who remember the warmth," she said. "Sometimes they are not the same." She stepped backward. The room took her. Only afterward did Daenerys realize the night had thickened. The air felt moist. Somewhere far away, thunder walked a line past the city. The harbor bells called to one another, low and thoughtful. Yora frowned after the masked woman's absence, as if he would set teeth in the place where she had stood. "It could be a trap," he said. "She is some sorcerer's brand. The warlocks would set you walking among their toys and close the door." "They need me alive," Daenerys said, not sure whether it was true or not and not willing to show that uncertainty to him. "They need my dragons. Then they will come for them when they can feed on them," he said bluntly. "Khaleesi, even if there were another egg." His mouth tightened. "I do not know what one more child will do to the hunger of this city." She looked down at the table. The lemon had a flaw at its tip, a brownish pucker like a mouth trying to say a word. "More knives will be drawn," she said. "More hands will offer bracelets. More doors will smile." "You have such a way of speaking now," he said, not unkindly. "You didn't when I first—" He stopped himself. Perhaps he understood the part he had almost spoken was about her brother, and the memory of those days in Pentos was a chain he rarely enjoyed handling in front of her, because it rattled against another chain that was his own. "What would you have me do?" she asked. "Turn away? Sit in Qarth as a guest whose welcome thins, and be always waiting for someone to open a door with their palm outstretched for something I cannot give?" He regarded her and sighed, his broad shoulders dropping. "I would have you safe." It was not an answer and not a lie. "I am not a child to be counted like a piece of silver at night," she said, but touched his wrist with her fingers and then drew back. "I will not go in day. I will not go alone." She glanced down at the dragons, who had all woken now, each in his own posture of awareness. Drogon sharp and forward, Regal a little to one side with eyes half-lidded, cunning Viserion looking at his own pale wing as if it belonged to someone else. "And if there is nothing there, I will have walked in a garden." Yora blotted his face with his sleeve. He did not nod. He did not forbid. She saw the effort he made to swallow all his arguments and fold them into his body. It would have been easier for him, she thought suddenly and with a surprising wave of compassion, to travel with a king who did not ask the world to change with him. But she was not what eased men. She slept an hour at most and woke to a heat that had no source, as if someone had placed a brazier very near her feet. She lay very still. The room was a bowl of shadow. The lanterns had been put out. The windows stood open. The drapes moved as if something large had brushed them. On the bed coverlet little scorches ran like the fossilized paths of ants. Drogon lay against her calves, and hot air moved through his belly as he breathed, so that the coverlet pulsed. She smelled rain, far off yet. She smelled the city sleeping in 1,000 ways. In the courtyard beyond the hall, a night bird called and a frog answered with a sound like a plucked string. She rose and wrapped herself in a thin green robe. In the polished bronze of the mirror, she saw the ghost of her own face, pale and high-cheeked and intent. She tied her hair with a ribbon Eerie had embroidered with little dragons, bad dragons with only 2 legs and smiles too wide, and did not wake her handmaids. She went to Yora's door and found it already open, as she had expected. He stood with his back to her, sword belted over his tunic, cloak gathered in his fist. He turned without surprise. "I knew you would go," he said. He had shaved and there was a rawness along his jaw, a strip of skin scraped too close. "You could have barred the stair," she said. called guards. Put me in the palm of Qarth. He gave her a look she could not read. Perhaps there were several men in that look and none of them comfortable. You are not meant for keeping, he said. Even the air knows that when you walk. Bring a cloak. She went back for a cloak. Thin linen lined by silk, pale as the inside of a shell, and for her sandals. And then they went down the stairs into a city that had shed its finery and tightened its belt. Qarth at night was the same shapes with different eyes. The walls were damp with a breath that came up from the harbor and the hidden cisterns, the channels under streets. Men talked in doorways in the quiet voices of those who do not want neighbors to hear if they are planning to leave them. Women lifted water from wells and watered terraces. The long-armed lamps along certain streets were shuttered. On others, they opened like copper flowers. Daenerys kept her hood low and the dragons close, each settled inside the cape, their bodies warm against her ribs. They made little soft clicking sounds when the lanterns startled them or when a cat ran across the alley before them and stopped dead. Fur on end, back like a bowed string. The Garden of 1,000 had 3 gates. They approached the least used, through a narrow lane whose walls were carved with reliefs of birds that looked like women and women that looked like birds, feathered breasts and wings where arms should be. Vines fell like hair. The gate itself had no keeper by day, only a woman who sat on a stool and sold permission to desire with a stick of chalk, smiling. At night there were 2 men in the livery of one of the 13, and beyond them a 3rd man in simple gray with nothing on him that admitted to wealth. The gray man watched more than the men in livery. Yora saw this and set a coin in his palm that was not too bright and not too dull, and said a word about being sent by a friend of Zaro's to see a thing that could not bear sun. The gray man looked at the coin and looked at Daenerys's hood and the set of her mouth. He let them in with a nod so small one had to look sideways to see it at all. Inside, the garden had been left to be extravagant with shadow. The moon, just past full, had turned waxen, and a haze during the last day's heat sat there still, remembering, making it shine with a false ripeness. Pebble paths wound among trees whose names had come across the sea and found new mouths here. The plinths were each their own little stage, the rare, the curious, the broken and mended more curious still. Daenerys breathed with her mouth open, on purpose, as she had learned as a child in places where the smells overwhelmed. It made them both more and less. They walked past a bronze horse whose head was too small and whose eyes were gems. They walked past a slab of stone pulled from far to the east, carved all over with tiny square letters like a carpet of regular ants. She had been told that if you read it aloud in the right order, it cured thirst. They walked past a handsome boy asleep upright in a chair of ebony with inlay. One leg crossed over the other, his mouth just detached from a reed flute now resting against his chest. He wore anklets of silver that would ring when he walked, if he walked. Yora moved with the steady patience she associated with sailors in harbors that were not theirs. He did not hurry and did not see everything, and the things he did not see were a way of saying to the shadows that he did not fear them but would not be teased by them. She had learned watching men. He glanced at her, questioning, at the first long pool where lilies had spread themselves too thick str. Angling, and dragonflies laid their eggs with purposeful dips like nods. She shook her head. The thing she was looking for would not lie near water, she thought. If she were the sort of man who collected wonders the way others collect favors and wives, and if among her wonders was something alive in a way that could not be fully managed, she would not trust it by water, which in the right wind moves where it will. They found the green stone by smell before she was sure of sight. It smelled of copper and mold and something almost bodily, like a hand kept too long in a glove. It was indeed sweating. Beads formed, trembled, slid, fell to the ground, were drunk by the dust. A vine had been trained to climb it, then cut back and trained again. Little scars showed where tendrils had once adhered. On the stone sat a plinth like a drum, and on the plinth a thing like a stone, except that no stone has that particular patience. The egg was the pail of old ivory that has seen too much smoke, and at first her breath left her, remembering the 3 that had been her wedding gift and her sorrow and her torch. But no, here the pail was different, not quite yellow, not quite white. It was moonlight filtered through bone. Along its curve ran hairline cracks, so fine a spider would be ashamed to claim them. which glinted when she shifted because some invisible sheen had dried there, like varnish. When she set her fingertips to it, she felt the way she sometimes felt when she walked into a room where a choral had just finished, that charged, almost brittle quiet that knows what the next sound will be. With her touch, something small inside the egg answered with the echo of a sound. Not a movement, not exactly. Rather a saying, "I am here." A pair of garden keepers sat a little way off and pretended to be asleep. One cracked an eye. Daenerys saw the gleam and straightened and moved her hand away. Yora's body came a half-step closer to hers and then back. A moth flared against the base of the plinth and settled. Its wings, whose edges were scalloped like little knives, were marked with two spots that looked like eyes. She thought of Qarth's word, death under the wings of a moth. Superstition, perhaps, or a local saying turned by a mask into a portent. The moth did not move. "Not here," Yora murmured. "Too many eyes. We'd need a cart and 3 men and a promise to pay that we'd spend a week explaining, and that's if luck sweats with us. There are doors with no hinges," Qarth had said. "There are mouths that bite. Offer something that has tasted you before." Daenerys looked down at her hands. The scars from the pyre were old and knew their limits. After that night, she had not taken to flames as if to a bath, as some tale-tellers craved. She had burned her fingers on a kettle after and learned damnably that miracle was not habit. But she had bled. Everyone who had the misfortune to be human had. She remembered the desert, the cracked skin at her heels that split into little pink mouths, the way her lips had fissured and healed into a new geometry so that drinking afterward felt like some slight treachery. She drew the dagger from her sash. A poor thing, ordinary, the blade clean. Yora's hand twitched toward hers and then did not stop her. She nicked the pad of her thumb, not deep, out of long practice, and squeezed until a bead of blood swelled, glossy, the size of a pomegranate seed. She set that drop where the lines were finest. It sat there, then broadened a little and thinned and slid down the shell and into a crack so fine she could not see that it had a mouth, and vanished. There was no sound. She felt, inside herself, something answer anyway. A deep, delayed recognition, like one you meet after a long parting who was a child before and is now almost not themselves. But the eyes are the same. She stepped back. "Now?" Yora said. "Not yet," she said. The garden keepers looked them over like the donkeys of some market they had been told not to sell to them. The gray man at the gate would count how long they stayed. She could feel the count in the air like beads sliding along a string. "Walk," she said, light, as if they were simply looking at curiosities by night because the day was too bright to see them clearly, because some things improve by absence of sun. They walked. She noted where the paths bent and how the plinth stood in relation to a sculpted tree of copper that rattled to show wind. She told herself a way through shadow with the sort of memory she used to learn a new city by its markets. When they returned, the green stone sweated still. The egg sat and did not sit. She felt worse than thirsty. She felt like a person who had put her feet in water after too long and been reminded that legs are capable of joy. She set her palm to the curved shell. The hairline cracks radiated from under her hand as if the thing were smiling with too many teeth. Drogon, under her cloak, pressed forward. His head slid out and he hissed, the sound very small but sharp as a struck string. His heat was a tangible thing in the night air, a presence that bent the air around it. Regal and Viserion pushed their muzzles free as well, peering out as if the egg had lifted a curtain, and on the other side of the curtain were not a room but another mouth. The keepers stood. One came forward with his hands held out in an arrangement that was meant to be calming. "Mistress," he said, "please do not disturb the curiosities." We will disturb nothing," she said, not turning, keeping her voice warm and careless. "My friend is from Astapor. He collects such things and is deciding whether to send word to his master. We will leave a token, as courtesy." Yora had always had a soldier's contempt for lies, but he peddled them as needed. Now he nodded and produced another coin. The keeper's eyes hungered despite himself. The other keeper, older, smaller, had been alive long enough to manage hunger better. He narrowed his gaze. "I will hold it for the master," he said, meaning Zaro. meaning perhaps merely the man who kept the books for the garden. But this garden is not a market. No, Daenerys agreed. It is a place with eyes, and a place with ears. She half smiled. The older keeper did not. When they had gone a little distance down the path, Yora put his mouth close to her ear, as if to sweethearts, and said that he did not like the way the older keeper looked at her cloak. She did not like it either. She turned down a side path, stepped out of the moonlight into a corner where a bush exhaled a scent like old paper and fennel and the earth was damp, and she drew Drogon fully into her arms. He did not want to be held. He wanted to lunge and bite the thing his blood told him was his to shape. She put her cheek to the top of his head hard enough to make him still. The corner of her mouth brushed a small scar along his crest, a line of slightly raised scales. He had scraped himself, trying to wedge into a jar earlier that day, and Irri had laughed until he showed his teeth to her, and then she had scolded him as a mother scolds a boy who is both a terror and a delight. Daenerys felt the scar and the remembered laughter, and for a moment the presence of all of them. Men and women in her care, beasts and boys and old swords, and a masked woman who told her things in the guise of riddles, sat heavy on her shoulders, and she felt almost weak with the complicated love that it was. A breeze crossed the garden, full of harbor salt. A bell sounded from the ships. She went back. She did not speak any word. She did not call for flame. That was a trick she had not yet taught them by command, though Drogon understood the desire for fire without language. She only set him down, unwrapped her cloak from around him so that the night could feel his body and he the night, and she offered him exactly what his nature asked: room and permission. He put his head to the egg and clicked very softly. The sound of his claws on the plinth was the sound of a necklace slipping through fingers. He opened his mouth. She felt his breath at her wrist, and it was like opening an oven someone had forgotten in summer. A small ribbon of fire came out, then another, testing like a child dipping a hand into a stream. The first licks left no mark on the shell but polished it. The third or fourth made a thin smell like glue, like old vellum scorching. The keepers began to hurry toward them. Yora stepped into their path as if he had gone there to ask them for the time, and when they frowned and made to go around him, he lifted his hand once, casually, and the sword was there in his fist, and the keepers reconsidered the path they had thought to take. The egg made a sound, not stone bone. A thin crack widened from under Drogon's breath like dawn. Her own thumb throbbed where she had cut it, as if the blood knew its way back and wanted to reclaim itself, and for an absurd second she thought about how the human body hates to lose any part of itself, even the parts that will rot in toilets or into cloth. The pale shell showed a slash of something glistening, and then a little knife of horn broke it from inside. The moth that had sat at the plinth's base fluttered upward and was gone. The first smell was not pleasant. It had in it the bluntness of hot wetness that has been enclosed, the iron reek of birth. Drogon hissed and stepped back and then lunged again, territorial on instinct. She caught his tail and he twisted and nearly took the flesh from her forearm but checked, unbelievably, at some sound she did not know she made. Regal and Viserion had gone still. Only their eyes moved, fast, back and forth, measuring. The small creature that pushed its soft, triangular face into the night was not any color. For a moment that was truly so. It was simply what it was, inside out with newness, membranes clinging to it in threads. Under those threads, where there were scales, the light found a quality like pearl but with a darker heart. A luster that did not lie on the surface but seemed to breathe up from within. The eyes opened and were milky, silvered. She had a foolish urge to wipe them with the edge of her robe as a mother wipes a child's face, and did not. The little mouth opened. The sound it made was smaller than any sound she had heard a dragon make. Not a cry, a soaking of air. She set both hands to the shell where it had not yet broken and guided its tearing as she had once seen a woman guide a lamb's birth. Not because the nature of the thing required it, but because the woman needed to feel necessary. She knew. She tore her robe on a nail and did not care. The membrane stuck to her wrist and was warm as breath. The creature wriggled and collapsed half into her hands and half onto the plinth. The world narrowed her, heat, the sheer indecent privilege of being close to a certain kind of life on the minute when it first tells air what it is. "Khaleesi," Yora said. through teeth and jaw clenched as he held the keepers at bay with only the respect a man has for always standing still. He meant, there are other eyes. He meant, we cannot do the rest of this here. She was already gathering the hatchling against her chest. It stuck to her, and its belly was hot enough that she cried out without meaning to, which brought the older keeper forward 2 steps even against Yora's blade. She tightened her arms. The membrane that clung to her tore with a small squeak. Tiny claws tried to find purchase on her sleeve. The hatchling turned its head toward the heat that was her. The slit of its mouth opened. The tip of a thin tongue tasted her collarbone as if she were a sweet pipe he could draw. When she glanced down, Regal and Viserion had lowered their heads along the plinth, curious, the way dogs sniffed the corpse of a rat. Not cruel, only learning. Drogon had pitched his weight forward, and it did not take prophecy to see the next thing he was. "I'll do." She hissed at him in a way she had not known she had learned. A sound very like his own, and he checked, offended. She put one hand on his head. "No," she said softly. He lowered his eyes half a degree and made a sound that meant something like, "But I could." "Now we go," Yora said. Cool as ice when there is only heat everywhere else. They went. The keepers would be explaining it one way to themselves now and another way when their master asked. The gray man at the gate had either decided he was uninterested in the business of other men's gods, or had been paid enough already to subtract this from his conscience. Daenerys kept her head low and her steps long and even. It is astonishing how much one can carry if one's stride does not change. The hatchling had stopped squirming. It had begun to do the slow, deliberate breathing of something whose body has just met its destiny. When they had crossed the lane with the women birds and found the wider street, and then the street that took them into a quarter where carpets hung from balconies like night fields, Yora blew out a long breath. It trembled at the mouth like a curtain touched by a draft. "What have you done?" he asked, not reproachful, only aghast in the way a man is when he sees his life altered and must watch himself become someone who will live with the alteration. She smiled then, the dry animal smile her body sometimes made without asking her permission, and did not say anything because there was nothing anyone could say that would not embarrass the moment by putting it into words too early. She did not glance behind them, she did not need to. If there were shadows following that were not their own, she would learn of them soon enough. The stare seemed longer under the weight of a fourth heart. Her arms ached and the skin under her robe stung where the hatchling's heat had pressed. In their chambers Eerie had fallen asleep with a comb in her hand, leaning against a chest with her head bowed. Jiki lay across the foot of the bed curled like a child, hair unrolled across her like a blanket of black ropes. They both started upright when Daenerys came in, Eerie's comb clattering to the floor, Jiki's hand going at once to the knife at her thigh as if her sleep had ended in the middle of a defense. "Close the shutters," Daenerys said. Her voice sounded off to her, as if she had a stone in her throat. "Bring me cloth. No, not the wool. The linen that does not shed." "What do you have?" Jiki asked, whispering and yet making it a question that filled the room. Daenerys opened her cloak and the little pale head turned toward the light of the candle on the table, and then toward the warmth of Jiki's body, and then toward the 2 shapes on the bed that were Regal and Viserion who had run ahead of her up the stairs and now climbed the coverlets as if they were dunes. Drogon came last, sulking at having been told no in the presence of strangers. His wings held half out for the sheer pride of having them. When the pale hatchling made no sound other than that slow, deliberate breathing, dragging his tongue over his teeth as if to clean them, he gave a drumming rattle in his chest and looked at Daenerys, not asking permission, simply sharing his disdain. Eerie brought cloth and water and a small bowl of oil she had infused with something that smelled like crushed seeds. Daenerys wiped the thickest parts of the translucent skin from the hatchling's belly and flanks, the way she would wipe a pot clean of thick stew before washing. It came away reluctantly. The skin she could not remove in that first pass would dry and flake and be chewed off by the hatchling itself. When she had wiped it down, the color under the pearliness showed itself a little more. It was not white. It was something like the inside of an oyster, that life-colored luster with gray in it and hints of colors that are not colors unless someone says a word to fix them. Blue, pink, green. There then gone as if the light itself preferred to make a game. "Pretty?" said Jiki, her face softening with the rapture of all who love small new things. Pretty and not pretty. What will you call it? Irri asked, already weaving a tale in her mind of which she would be keeper and keen for Dothraki ears. Daenerys did not answer at once. She set the hatchling on the bed between Rhaegal and Viserion and held one hand atop Drogon's head, the way she sometimes had to hold a man's hand in council to keep him where he was long enough to listen. The hatchling made no effort to move. Its eyes had begun to clear. The milky veil receded as if some tide went backward inside them, and beneath, the eyes showed a polished steel kind of brightness, a light like bright coins under deep water. When it blinked, its lids closed both ways, down and up and sideways, a trick of all her dragons, but here it looked more deliberate, as if it knew an art and was showing it. Jorah stood with his shoulder against the lintel of the inner doorway and watched. The sternness in his face was not disapproval but reverence reduced into the only shape that would not embarrass him. He wiped his hands on his tunic and looked down at the smear of pale membrane that clung to his palm, then rubbed it away the way a man rubs away a woman's hair from his cloak to keep the sight private. "The city will know by noon," he said in that same contained voice. "By night the warlocks will dream you blind. By morning," Daenerys said, "we will have fed it. What will it eat?" Irri asked, curious and practical. "What the others eat," Daenerys said. "Meat, charred, small things first. Not lizards," she added, because Irri had a fondness for catching them with her hand and had been tempted to offer one to Viserion once. "Not yet. Where did you find it?" Jiki asked, even though she was already guessing from the damp sheen on Daenerys's robe and the garden smell in Jorah's hair and the whisper of the city's rumor in the air that had followed them up the stair like a light scarf. "In a place that gathered things men believed would stay if they were admired enough," Daenerys said. "But some things do not stay. They only pause." The hatchling, as if to show what she meant, lifted its head and then its throat and then its belly and tried to draw in a breath too big for its body. The sound it made did not fill the room. It filled the place inside each person's chest where the body remembers the first breath. Daenerys realized she had not taken air for several heartbeats and did so. The room then seemed to go on in the way rooms go on after something has come into them. The night turned on its back and showed its belly to the coming day. She could not think of names. Names were a way to weave a thing into yourself, and then it could not be fully stolen, whatever else they took. Jorah had said her habit was to name them for men she had loved and lost or been deceived by, or both. She could follow that habit and call this one for her father, and the thought sat in her like a stone at the bottom of a clear pool. There, visible, weighty, not what she wanted to pick up. She could call it for her mother and speak the name so rarely on men's lips that it would feel new as bread. Riella, whispered at the mouth of a child perhaps once, and then in no mouth but her own for a long time. The shape of that name in her was softer than her father's, less like iron and more like silk pulled tight across a frame. Or she could choose no person at all but a word that had belonged to them before she had, a word about the sky or the sea or the moon. She did not speak the name then. It seemed like a thing that needed to be said once in a quiet place and never told to the walls aloud afterward, or the name would become something the city could barter with. When at last Irri and Jiki had laid new cloths and set the brass brazier going, and when Jorah had, gone down to speak with the house guards about doubling watch and with the steward about who was to be turned away and who was to be admitted with cunning, and when the gray light of dawn had placed a thin knife between the shutters, Daenerys lay down on the bed beside the hatchling and watched it breathe. Drogon lay on her other side with his back warm against her hip, offended still, and the two of them made her the middle of a heat that would have cooked someone else where she lay. But to her it was the only place her body understood at that moment as safety. Rhaegal and Viserion had diffused themselves into the shadows, one on the chest, one on the sill, both watching with the patient fascination of a pair of old men on a bench with a child between them to tell stories to and judge. She dreamed not of fire but of water. A canal full of blue flowers whose scent was the same as the oil Irri had used to rub her feet, petals heavy, fish moving underneath like strokes of ink. In the dream, she pushed a little boat with a pole, and somewhere ahead a bell was ringing underwater. The boat knocked against something soft that resisted and then yielded. A dressed mannequin wrapped in parchment. She woke with a taste of paper on her tongue and her hand already reaching. The hatchling had shifted to chew at its own flank and had flaked off a ribbon of skin. She rubbed her thumb across it and it came free and curled like ash. By afternoon, the city had found out, as Yora had promised it would. A messenger with hair oiled to a gloss and rings on all his fingers brought a polite note in an upright, careful hand asking whether the rumors were true and whether she would honor the 13 by bringing the new miracle to a dinner in 2 days' time. Another note, in a hand so fine the letters looked like threads drawn by a spider, asked in a tone almost bored whether she would accept the gift of 6 fat ducks in blood, dressed and plucked, as a token of admiration. A boy who shouted fruit in the street below shouted something else too, and men leaned over balconies to answer, and women threw seeds to the pavement to see whether they would sprout there and make their own garden. With the notes came other things. A woman carrying a basket of blue orchids with their roots still in a square of soil that had been cut thin, wrapped in cloth. From the pureborn, she said, eyes demure, and he had said that the mother of dragons must know there were places in Qarth where things grew without being eaten first by heat. A man with hair as white as the spine of a book and lips stained by some herb who said nothing at all at first but smiled, showing teeth that had been tattooed tiny with swirls of black. And when he did speak he asked whether he might see the new child. And when Yora said no he smiled again, unblinking, tiniest muscles of disappointment around his eyes, and left. And then there was Piet Pri. Daenerys had not seen him since the House of the Undying took her to its table and offered her a cup steeped in loss. He had failed to hide his anger well enough at her denial, and then there had been other incidents, the kind of thing that in Qarth was not called ambush because the blades had come with proper words. Now he came in daylight, wearing the kind of simple blue that men wear to say they are less than they are, which is more dangerous than when they adorn themselves. His lips were stained the color of old bruises. Around his eyes the skin had thinned. He smiled, and it was an exercise. "We hear you have been blessed again," he said. Daenerys was careful not to look directly at his eyes. Sometimes when she did the room wobbled and distorted, as if the air were water and he was a stone dropped into it. She watched his hands instead. "We are all blessed," she said. "You have your house and your cups." He flicked a glance at Drogon, who had taken to the back of her chair and draped himself over it like a cape. He did not look at the pale hatchling asleep in the Bowl Eyrie headline W. Its softest cloth and the linen from the bottom of a chest of someone else's grandmother's dowry. He did not look a second time, and that careful omission was the looking she feared. "The Undying send congratulations," he said lightly. "There will be a place set for you, for all your children. We would love to share with them a few inspirations. Did you know that with certain preparations their fire can be made to sing? And that the smoke they make can be used to? I have learned enough from your house," she said, and heard her voice make a music it had never made before. Something cold around something hot. "And I do not let them sing for those who would put their hands in their mouths." His lips tightened. Men like him never looked as well when anger left them. Their faces were meant for secrets, not for honest heat. "The city will be less kind to your refusals now," he said, as if he were giving her a kindness, a lesson, one she should thank him for. "It has its own hunger. It knows when a breadbasket is full and when someone holds the cloth too tight." "The city may eat," she replied, "but my children are not its stones to be ground between teeth." She rose because she wanted to feel her body in space larger than the chair her guests came to see, and let him know that she used her legs and would have no man forget that. "What else have you brought, Master Pri? You did not come only to offer me other men's appetites." He put his hand into his sleeve and drew out a little thing, wrapped in silk. He set it on the table carefully, in the slow way that says, "I do not fear what I hold, and yet I do not treat it as ordinary." She did not reach for it. He unwrapped the silk. Inside lay a knife no longer than her hand. Its handle was bone or something that had once been alive, carved with a pattern like fish scales. Its blade had no color. Rather, it had all colors if one moved it and none if one held it still. Glass or something like glass. The light did not like it and slid off. Piet Pri smiled almost kindly. "A gift," he said. "A small one. For a woman who must open matters now and then best left closed." She knew enough not to touch it. "You are generous with tools," she said. "Were I to take it, I should suspect it cut the hand that held it. It would cut more, he said, still smiling. And when a hand is cut, one can always have it read by those who know the language of veins. Yora took the silk, wrapped the thing back up neatly as if it were a garment rather than a weapon, and handed it to a house slave to carry to the chest where things were put that no one used. Piet Pri watched that happen and made a small slight movement of one shoulder, acknowledging the game, their mutual knowledge that he had meant to be refused, and that refusing had the merit of bringing the word refusal into the room and hanging it from the ceiling as a kind of lamp. After he was gone, Daenerys went to the bowl where the hatchling slept and rested her fingers along its spine. It had dried now where she had not cleaned it, and it had made itself the decision to be alive with the kind of serene, arrogant command that only the very new and the very old have. It was not like Drogon, it was not like Regal, it was not like Viserion. It held silence the way a priest holds a vessel. What will the men call it? Irri asked from the doorway, an imp's grin in her voice, anticipating the ways of the city. They call Drogon the black, they call Viserion the white, they call Regal the green, though he is more like a jewel. What will they say to this one when they speak over wine to women and make themselves large? Whatever they say, Daenerys replied. We will call it by its name. She looked up at Yora. He had not asked again. He waited like someone at the edge of a field while the owner walks it and sees what is there. And when she comes back, he will tie his horse and help with the harvest without asking which side is best or whether the ground is richer nearer the wall. Riella, she said, almost to herself, to hear whether the room could hold it and the word would tremble in the air and be recognized. The tiny creature did not stir. Riella, she said again, and this time she felt something in her chest loosen, as if a knot that had been tied there by other hands when she was small had been worried free by a patient woman. Khaleesi, Yora said, very quietly, carrying the name like a precious porcelain cup you don't want to spill. It suits her. She did not say what sat on her tongue then. That perhaps it suited her more than any other creature in the room because it was older than it was, because it came out of a thing that had been beautiful and useless to men until it shattered, because it carried under its pale surface a strength that was not for show. When night fell again, the harbor bells found a different tune as the wind shifted. In the alley below, a group of men drank purple wine and sang. One of them, drunk, tried to sing 2 songs at once and made nonsense words that the others liked because they were brave laughter in a city that smelled of new fear. Daenerys stood again on the terrace with the day's heat caught under her feet. Drogon hunted moths by the lantern and crunched them with relish, chitin popping in his teeth, a sound that would once have made her grimace and now was just another in the suite of noises her life made. Regal climbed the carved vine and stared at the sky. Viserion sat on the parapet and watched the street with lordly mildness, unfolding and folding his wings just to feel their reach. And Riella, her Riella, slept again, this time inside the hollow of the brazier after the coals had been tipped out and the brass retained its warmth. It was a good habit, Daenerys thought, to seek wells of heat without flame, not the kind that flickers but the kind that holds. I think I hate this place, Yora said beside her, without passion. It's too honest about its hunger. It never pretended to be a holy city, she said. It tells you this is what it is. There are worse lies. He leaned on the parapet, arms folded, leather creaking. He considered his words and discarded most of them. What will you do? He said at last. When Xaro comes with his 33 keys and his vault and all the words of belonging those code for, tell him my dragons do not belong to vaults, and I will not either. He will be hurt by the idea you think he wants to keep you and not honor you, Yora said, almost amused and completely bitter. He can be hurt, she replied evenly. There is enough in this city to feed on. Khaleesi, he said in that unhappy tone that meant he wished to be at once servant, friend, and something else, and the war among those desires made him tired. Every man you deny will bring you another man you must deny better. She turned to him. Then deny them for me, she said, with a softness that made the words kind and yet made clear the daisy chain of his oaths. He smiled without being pleased. I do. He cleared his throat. There is another matter. A guild they call the Sorrowful Men. They have a way of hiding their faces by making them miserable. They mark themselves with tears. I have heard of them, she said. A woman at the market dropped a jug when she saw a man walk past with such marks. Then she looked at me as if she had dropped it for my sake and I had caused her husband's annoyance. They serve whoever pays them most to be sad, he said. A small man, he has silk like water and always haggles to pay less than the price, has asked what their price is to make you not a story but a lesson. And what will they cost? Too much for him, Yora said, for once speaking without any dust on his answer. But not too much for those with vaults and warlocks. I do not like shadow at your back when you walk. Then walk closer to my back, she said. He looked at her and nodded once, and something in his face that had been tied tight gave. He stood a little easier then, as if a burden had shifted from the center of his shoulder blade to the meat of his arm where a man can carry it by choice. The air smelled of rain closer now, not only the memory of it. Lightning flickered out over the sea and the ships answered with bells, as if the light could be shaken from the sky like fruit if one only brought enough sound. Daenerys counted the heartbeats between the light and the sound and felt like a child who knows a secret no one else can hear. Qarth came again that night, as she had half expected and entirely dreaded in a way that was not fear. The mask caught the lightning and made it slide like water. You have put your hand on a wheel, she said. You must spin now or lose fingers. There is always a wheel, Daenerys said. Sometimes it is under you and sometimes over you and sometimes your hand is on it and sometimes your head. One must be the thing that holds when it turns. You speak like someone who has already been crushed once, said Qarth. That is why you will be trouble. Will I be trouble to those who would set cups before my children? She asked, letting anger move in her voice now because she knew that Qarth, if anyone, would hear the words she had not said and measure them without flinching. You would be trouble to those who think they can inventory the world, Qarth said. Keep a list, check it twice. None of their ledgers have a column for what has happened tonight. When there is no column, men may do strange sums. Does it change their magic? Daenerys asked, curious, leaning forward without meaning to. Does it change anything beyond my house and theirs? Qarth tilted her head. It changes the stories men tell in bed to women who will carry them to their children's ears, she said. Sometimes that is the only change that matters. The lightning came closer. Thunder cracked so near the terraces behind them that both Irri and Jiki cried out, and even Yora flinched and made a little oath in his own tongue. Drogon did not flinch. He liked thunder. It made him flare his wings so the membranes showed their thin traceries of veining like leaves in winter. Riella woke. She lifted her head out of the empty brazier and blinked and turned toward the sound. What passed for flame in her newborn body was not ready yet to desire a thing to consume. She exhaled a breath that was only breath, warm and newly born, and in that breath was what the others did not have. Some faint coolness at the core, not cold, not the death of cold, only the absence of hurry. Daenerys felt it on her wrist like a ghost of air she had once known in a summer cellar with jars of preserved peaches in rows. She will be different, Daenerys thought, not with pride or fear, only with the calm recognition one gives to the truth of a child's nature. She will do her burning without show. The city will call her white and call her lucky and call her small, and none of those names will be true. The first rain came in thick warm drops that made puddles on the terrace with little crowns. Qarth sighed. Somewhere a woman laughed because the dust had been teaching her not to laugh and she had defied it. Men moved their wares into corners. The orchids in the courtyard below turned their faces up as if they had always been made for this and not for being carried by boys to doorways. Daenerys stood with her palms open and let the rain wash the salt from her skin and the ash and the tiny, almost invisible clinging things that birth had put on her. She did not close her eyes. She held them open in the rain because sometimes one must show the sky that one is not afraid of it, and because she wanted to keep looking at the shape of the moment so she could find it again when she needed strength later, as one finds a house again by counting doors and remembering the cracked window with the pigeon nest. Behind her, the room was full. It was full of Rhee's careful small fusses and Jiki's laughter and Yora's long-suffering patience with that laughter. It was full of the whisper of scale on fabric and the little clicking of dragon teeth and the intermittent sigh of the hatchling's breath and the slow, deepening rhythm of the rain. It was full of what it had never been full of before. A fourth heartbeat that was now part of the measure by which she would walk from here to wherever the sea and the sand and the stubbornness of men and the caprice of gods would send her. When she went back in at last, soaked and clean, Qarth had gone without a sound. The mask left behind no scent of lacquer, no mince of herbs on the air. The room had the played-out feeling a scene has after the players leave, when the stage hands move sets and the orchestra lowers its instruments and the audience is a new thing, talking about what it has seen and already making it other than it was. Daenerys sat at the table and bit into the lemon she should have saved for ceremony and let the sour flood her mouth until tears came. She swallowed the tears and the lemon both. She washed her hands and arms and face with the water Eerie poured, each pour a little slower than the last, as if she were trying to stretch time to do justice to what had just happened. She lay down again and put one hand on Drogon, one hand on the brazier where Riella slept, and something in her that had been braced since the desert, since before the desert, since the sea before the desert, since the room in Pentos with the carpet that looked like a field and the man whose I never quite rested on her unless to calculate. Something of that loosened. Sleep did not come immediately. She lay listening to the rain and to her people breathing and to the little new pauses in her own breath that the presence of the fourth heart taught hers. She remembered her mother with a strangeness that was not grief, because she had had too little of her to grieve properly, only the outline of a story. She thought of the names. Riella, she thought again. And this time the name sat in her mouth like something sweet-sour, like a fruit whose rind is bitter, but whose flesh grows sweeter if you wait. She said it in no language but her own, and the room did not echo because sometimes one must not have echoes. The room must keep the word and not multiply it. Morning came in chewy gray. The city had been smoothed by rain. The street connivers wore lighter garments because they were damp in their souls, too. Xaro came early, of course, with a cloak someone had embroidered with real beads in a pattern of waves and seahorses, and with a smile that could have funded a city and had. He carried a bowl of little fried fishes dusted with spice, which he himself scattered on the table like a god distributing stars. He leaned toward the brazier and sniffed. "You are a marvel," he said. "You are the marvel Qarth always knew it deserved." "Qarth deserves many things," she said, rising to the playing field he had chosen. "We must all consider what we can afford to give it. Your friendship is cheap for such a return," he said. "And if friendship were not enough, marriage is a thing that makes two into one and that one into stronger one." He ate a fish, eyes closed, as if it were a kiss. 33 keys, Daenerys. 33 promises bound in bronze and iron and silver and gold. A vault with things greater than vaults. The city loves its numbers. Give it one more to love. "The children do not like vaults," she said. "The brass smells like old men in hot weather. And marriage is a word that means something different to me than to you." He spread his hands. "Tell me your meaning. I will learn it. Marriage to me was a tent that became a house that became a funeral," she said, not smiling. "I've learned I can be wife to a man who cannot be owned. I doubt I can do the other kind." He had the grace to let the smile fade and the more practical look take over. "Then ships," he said. "Ships are as honest as marriage, more so. Wood, water, wind, and coin. And oars and men," she said. "And whether the men love me or their silver most. They will row for the dragon's mother," he said, and did not glance at her breasts when he made mother into an ornament. "They will row for fire over water. I will give you a fish," she said. "A real one and not one made of glass. The warlocks are hungrier than they were last week and angrier as well. They will come in a shape we call friend. They will offer to teach my children new songs. If you do not wish to hear my announcement in the square, then you will do what you can to draw them to other corners of the city and make them memorize your keys instead of my house." Xaro made a little moo. "I do not barter breath, but I hear you." He set one hand, long and ringed, on the rim of the brazier. He drew it back at once, surprised at the heat that still lived in the metal. He looked down. Riella stirred and lifted her head and blinked with the deliberate double blink. He made a sound that perhaps he had never made in a business conversation. It was fully unguarded. He stifled it with laughter and hid it and stood up and was Zaro Zoandaxos again. No one anyone should ever pity. Such a gentle little monster, he said. I wish I had 3 to that one, but I do not. So I must woo the mother. He bowed, his hand over his heart. I leave you a cloak, and my keys remain for admiration if not for use. The city admires what it cannot have. Be careful of admirations that come with knives. When he left, Yora returned from the outer gate with eyes that had narrowed the way men's eyes do when a new set of footprints has been put over their yard. 2 men watched and 1 poor boy, he said. We cannot trust the poor boy not to cry for coin. Then feed him, she said. Children who are full talk less. Stories about food do not travel far. They end at the mouth. She fed her dragon strip. As of meat she had had Irichar lightly. She watched Riella worry at her portion with a seriousness that made her want to laugh. Her jaw was not strong enough yet to take what Drogon took, and when she tried too hard she gave up and set one absurdly tiny forefoot on the strip to hold it still while she dragged with her teeth. Viserion, after watching with lordly mildness, pushed a smaller piece toward her with his snout, then pretended to find something very interesting on the tapestry rather than see what she would do with it, so no one could say he had done it on purpose. Regal simply looked with his old man patience and learned her rhythm. When Daenerys had wiped their mouths with a damp cloth, Jiki making fun of her for treating dragons like colts and babies and her ignoring that for the simple joy of it, she sat again and wrote a note, this one short and bald and with no careful politeness. She would not be accepting the Undying's invitation. She pressed the seal with a ring bearing a little dragon that some artisan had offered her out of love or greed or both months ago. And when Irri took the message, she looked at Daenerys with pride and pity both. What will they do? Irri asked, because women who have been slaves learn to ask what men will do and prepare twice for it. They will do what those who are refused often do, Daenerys said. They will say they never desired. They will not, Yora said. They will desire harder. That is what magic is half the time. Desire with a hat. All kinds of hat, Jiki said, smoothing her braid with both hands to show how little hats had to do with real desire, to her mind. Irri laughed. The days that followed were full of what follows any birth. A temporary shrinking of the world to the room where the newborn lives, and the enlargement that is its paradox. People came and were turned away. Stories came and were allowed to settle or were sent back to the air to fly again in other streets, altered. Riella changed each hour. She learned to hold her head better, so that its weight belonged to her and not to the eggshell she had left. She learned the first little outrages. Putting teeth to a thing that did not like to be bitten, hissing at a basket that had every right to exist in its shape. She learned what her brothers would teach her, not in kindness only but in dominance, and Daenerys learned when to let them instruct and when to put her hand on the heavy skulls and say, in a voice that would later make men flinch and leave rooms, no. The city watched. The city turned. The city whispered to itself behind doors and in wine shops and in courtyards where women combed one another's hair and lay flowers along the edges of bowls. The sorrowful men began to move like the first small lines a knife puts into soft wood to show where deeper cuts will go. Piet Pri appeared twice in places Daenerys did not expect and once in a place she did, and each time his smile measured the distance between what his house had wanted and what the mother of dragons preferred. Zaro sang an old song about the sea and made jokes about people who had never seen it and were therefore unworthy of soup. Qarth did not come again, but she dreamed of lacquer and woke with the taste of rice on her tongue. In the hot afternoons when breath itself felt like work, she took Riella to the terrace and let her sleep in the shade where a circle of sun could reach her tail but not her head, and she listened to the sound of the harbor and thought of the word home, which had never adhered properly to any place her feet had stood on. She supposed that sometimes the word home meant a moving group of people and beasts and fires that a woman carried with her like a shawl, and sometimes it meant a city of the dead whose doors were shut, and sometimes it meant a mountain of bones and jewels, and sometimes it meant a ship that was all sail and no keel, and sometimes it meant a single name said in the dark without echo. Now, unexpectedly, and perhaps only for a little while, it meant this. For hearts breathing in a room in a city that had admired itself for too long and would learn that admiration is not the same as love. When the first threat came, it was stupid, like many first threats, and made her angrier for that. A boy with tattooed tears pretended to spill wine on her dress at a market. He reached not with the hand that spilled, but with the other. Yora's hand on his wrist was a thing made long ago for exactly this purpose and remembered now perfectly. The boy cried, actual crying, no training, and ran. The wine made a flower on the skirt. Irri scolded the stain and Daenerys laughed because it seemed, for a breath, a small thing that could be solved with vinegar and sun. But when they returned, a young woman was waiting in the shade of the gate, holding a plum and eating it slowly to make her occupancy last. She lifted her chin and Daenerys saw that the tears were tattooed there too, faint yet new. "If you will not give them a song," she said, "they will take the words you would have sung." Daenerys looked at her the way one looks at a child who has chosen the path you did not want her to choose, but who will not be unchosen by a scold. "How much did they give you?" she asked, not with scorn but with curiosity, because one can fight a thing better if one knows its number. "Enough for my mother's teeth," the girl said. "She has 4 that ache and 2 that must be taken. There is a man who does it without breaking the jaw if you pay him more. Then you must take that money and go to that man," Daenerys said. "And then you must find another trade. Go to the woman in the first carpet stall and tell her Irri sends you to hold a child while she weaves. You can cry while you do it and she will not mind. She will only tell you a song." The girl stared. Her mouth worked as if there were a pit in the plum that would not shift. "And if I do not? Then do not," Daenerys said. "But if I see you at my gate again, I will give you to Jiki to braid your hair in such a way that all the city will know you are under my eye, and there are men who will not pay a woman marked thus to weep for them, and you will hurt your mother doubly. No money and no privacy." The girl swallowed. "I will go," she said at last, and ran, ashamed of her running, which told Daenerys there was hope. At night she slept again on the curve of the world that was the edge of her bed between heat and air. She dreamed of a field of ash and a wind that drove little gray spirals across it like schools of fish, and of a gate that had mouths for hinges and groaned when it swung. In the dream a man offered her a key, and when she took it, it turned into a fish which writhed and she could not grip it. And then it slipped free and fell and lay on the ash and gasped and became a piece of driftwood, and then a stick of chalk that drew a circle around her feet before she could step away. And then a child pressed her hand with sticky fingers and put a pomegranate seed into her palm and said, "Spit it out before the seed swallows you." She woke with a taste of iron. Her thumb had bled again where the tiny bite from the hatchling's first tongue had broken the skin. She licked it and felt foolish and very much herself. On the 7th day, Riella took her first true flame. It was not pyre fire, not the exuberant youthful rush of Drogon's heat, not the gold-white curl of Viserions, not the darker greenish tinge like tempered metal that Regals had. Hers showed almost not at all. Daenerys felt it more than she saw it, the little wave of heat that left behind a faint waver above the strip of meat and then the crisping edge. Jiki jumped and clapped, and Irri laughed and put her hands to her mouth, and Yora said nothing, only nodded in a way that meant, "One more thing to be spoken of when we speak in a room where there are no birds listening." Daenerys put her hand above the hatchling's small head and felt the warmth rising. Good, she thought, not for conquest or for fear or for the argument with other men about who owned what land and which dying banners deserved to be raised on their corpses. Good in the simple way of good bread and sweet water and a child whose breathing is regular. Good because she had not known she could love one more thing without becoming a cracked vessel, and because she had not cracked. When the next lightning came, it was farther out and the rain did not follow. The city, cleaned and given a new skin once, had dirted itself again as cities do. The sorrowful men were more careful, too careful, which is always noticeable for a while. The warlocks sent her a basket of dried leaves that smelled of old rooms and said they were for teaching someone to sleep and dream, as if she would want to wake in their dreams. Zaro sent her a silk robe the color of water in shade and said it was for forgiving the heat. Qarth did not come and did not send, and so Daenerys listened for her in the absence of things. She heard, instead, her own voice rising sometimes in ways she would need to remember when her path curved and brought her eventually where it must. On the night that the harbor took a ship it did not give back, Daenerys rose and went out and stood on the terrace again barefoot. The city sounded like a man turning over in sleep and forgetting and remembering a grief. She held her hand over the brazier where Riella had slept, now cold, and felt the ghost of warmth the metal still kept. She whispered the names of her dragons to herself, not calling, not commanding, only naming, and felt each in its place. Drogon on the parapet, eyes aflame. Viserion under the table, half asleep, dreaming of moths. Regal up where the ceiling did not quite meet the wall, because he preferred corners, alert despite his stillness. Riella curled in the hollow of a cushion on the bed, breathing that measured newborn breath, as if she would never hurry for anyone. Somewhere out over the water a bell told the hour. Somewhere behind her Yora snored in the way men snore when they are embarrassed by how tired they are but cannot help it. Somewhere below a cat made love for a long time and then made war and then slept as if nothing had ever mattered. Somewhere in the city a man poured wine from one cup into another and spilled it and said aloud the name of the person he wished had caught it. Somewhere, Daenerys thought, a child spoke the name Riella for the first time at a table in a house where a woman was feeding another woman's baby, and that name made a shape in the air and then fell into the life of the city and made a small new current there. She would need ships. She would need swords she could trust and others she could not but knew where to place. She would need to teach her children to fly and to feed and let them learn when to be merciless and when to wait. She would need to learn how to stand in rooms with men who wanted her and then refused to walk with them to doors where keys waited, and to walk with those who did not want her. She would need to learn when to be the door, when to be the key, when to be the person who had none and walked past anyway. For now, she stood in the warm, damp night of a city that believed it owned itself, which is one of the most dangerous beliefs any place can hold. She breathed in and out and held in her a fourth small flame that had not existed in the world yesterday and now did, pale and steady and arcing up, ready to show its own opinion of what to burn. She closed her eyes, not to shut the world out but to let it in, and let the sound of her household settle on her like a cloak she could carry. For small hearts among many larger ones, a number that felt right to say aloud and would be said in rooms that would change its meaning and then bring it back to her as something new. She would be ready to hear it. She placed one hand on T. He warm metal, one hand on the stone rail that had been warmed by a sun she did not own. And then she went inside to her bed and the brazier and the breathing of her dragons and lay down to the sort of sleep that comes to those who have begun not only a day but an era, and do not yet fully know its length.